from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I am Reverend Charles Harrison, and on this episode, we will continue the conversation that Eunice, Trotter, and I was having about Black Indianapolis, the challenges, the issues that we face as a community, and how do we move forward. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Real Talk. And Eunice, let's finish this conversation we were having about the divisions in the community. And certainly I started to sense that with some of the affiliations that I had with Republicans as a moderate Democrat, and certainly many of the pastors and people who were part of 10 Point, just the pushback that we were getting, from various segments of the community, whether it was clergy, whether it was people part of the council culture, young, anti-violence groups, community leaders, activists, the list went on and on and on. But we decided to push back against that we were not going to give in to that, because the real issue was what was happening in our neighborhoods, and there was no real answer or solution on the other side, and that what we were doing was working. And we were trying to challenge the community that if we didn't come together as the village, we were going to see record-breaking numbers continue in the city, which it has. It's now at levels that 20 years ago I never imagined I would see in Indianapolis, where last year in 2021, we ended up with 271 homicides, and knew that we were getting closer and closer to 300. So how do we move beyond this, or can we? Because you talked about the divisions within the ministerial community, and that is true. That's real. There are real divisions there. There are divisions within the community, among community leaders, and among our elected officials. There are just divisions everywhere. And maybe that's one of the reasons we haven't really been able to address these critical issues that affect the masses of people in our community.
Well, I want to say this. I know that there are divisions within the white community just as well.
Right.
The problem with the divisions in the Black community is that we can't afford to have divisions that we've seen historically. Otherwise, we will make no progress. It used to be that, back in the old days, they would have barn raisings and everybody would pitch in. Mm. Now, I don't know if we could get anybody to pitch in nowadays on a barn raising. They'd be arguing over, whether the roof was going to be, made out of one material or another, or who's going to be the supplier and all that stuff, missing the big picture of the barn getting raised. So we can't afford to have those divisions now. Can we afford to disagree? Well, that's human. It's just like in a family. You're going to have siblings who fuss and fight, but, anybody outside of that house better not mess with you. We have to operate and move like that. Yes, we can take our fights in-house and deal with the issues that we have and come up with strategies so that we have more of a united front. I do know that the Latino community is doing just that in this city. And they are, mobilizing their block of population here to get the things done that they need done. There are other groups that are also mobilizing and uniting and coming together. Now, is it all about color? No. Even with the political issues that are going on today, say with the slating issues, that's just not a Black thing. There are white candidates who also refuse to go through slating. So it's not all about race. It is not all about race. I would venture to say that more of our divisions are over money, dollars, class, control versus color. So, you know, and I always
So
say,
when you say the divisions within our community, that you see it driven more by money.
yes,
Okay.
where are the resources going to
Right.
go? Who's going to have control of those resources? What will be done with those resources? Whose neighborhood is going to benefit? You know, whose community is going to benefit? So, yeah, I think that it always boils down to that mighty dollar.
Why can't all communities benefit from it if there is a coming together, you know, from community leaders from various segments of the community? Because there are a lot of leaders in the community, and we end up having this battle over this one piece of the pie, which is a very small piece that we have these battles over, rather than, you know, asking for more of the pie, you know, in order to address the issues that our community faces. And I think those who are in power know we do that, and they don't have to really deal with us because they know that we are divided and are at each other.
Well, you said it. You said that, you know, there's a small piece of pie that we fight over.
Right.
And that we should be focused more on getting a larger piece of the pie. And to get that larger piece of the pie, we have to have some control over how it's cut up.
Right.
So if we don't have the people in the rooms making those decisions about how that pie will be split, we're always going to be fighting over a little slice. So how do you get more people at the table to make those decisions? And one of the ways, of course, is through political means. But another way is through economic means. If we as a people sought and enacted ways to combine our resources, we wouldn't have to fight over their pie. We have our own pie. So, you know, if there was a way, and I don't know what that way is. I'm not one of the smartest people, not the sharpest tack in the box.
Yeah.
But I do know that if we had control of our own resources, our own dollars, instead of filtering those dollars to the very communities that will oppress us and prevent us from having a larger piece of the pie, we're always going to be having this fight. We have to find ways to be more collective in how we spend our money. That dollar has to circulate within our communities far more than it does now. We make the money. There's no one who argues that we don't. Lots of us make a bunch of money, but we spend those dollars outside of our community. That means our people do not get the benefits of the jobs or of the education or the political power or any of those things that we are all now scrambling to get, you know, utilizing that little slice of the pie.
So, but what about now in Indianapolis? The president of the city county council is black. The previous one was black. We have several black elected officials, both, you know, on the council and in other city positions. And we have certainly state legislators, and I know their challenge is a little greater because of the supermajority of Republicans in the state house. And I guess my argument and concern is that we have put all of our eggs in one basket as a people now, and I don't think that was always the case, but it certainly is now, that we don't have the political clout that we could have if we would recognize that we have people on the other side who have some of the same concerns that we do. We may have a difference on how to get to the same place,
And that's the problem,
but we're
right
trying to get to the same place,
Yeah.
but we don't deal with one another and strategize with one another, rather than we demonize them so we don't get anywhere.
Right. But you said it again, that we take different roads to the same destination. And because we're on different roads going for that same destination, you're going to have that conflict along the way, because the conflict is over the resources to get to that destination. So do you use those dollars to provide more social services money, or do you use those dollars to provide more economic development money? Where is that money going to go? And then there are different opinions about where it should go and how it should get there.
But how can we find Eunice common ground on that? Because I think most of us take positions based on our own life experiences that shape our, our viewpoints about many of the issues that we are facing. I'm from Southern Indiana, grew up in a small rural town on the Ohio River, just happened to be 5 minutes from downtown Louisville. So I had the experience of both rural and urban because of, where I grew up at. So certainly I have two different perspectives on a lot of things, growing up in a community that was predominantly white. But 5 minutes away, I could go across the river and be in the black community where, there were several 100,000 black people.
Right. But you were from a predominantly white, smaller community.
Right.
And you learned how to navigate white folks.
Yes.
That's just the bottom line.
Right.
And so people here in Indianapolis with deep roots here tended to be in segregated communities. I grew up on the east side. My father was a Garveyite. It was all black neighborhood, all black park, all black schools, all black everything. We did not have, growing up, those same kind of needs to be, I don't want to use the word subservient, but I'll use the word second to white people. So when you are in a community where you have to be second to white people, you learn how to be second to them and to be more collaborative with them, because that's the only way you're going to have any power. You got to communicate and collaborate with them. In segregated larger settings, you're going to find people who were not collaborative with them. It was either, it was not over, race, color in these communities until later on when those communities began to be dismantled, so to speak, and we had to spread away from those communities. So there is an issue with people who came from those roots and being able to negotiate, if you will, with the people in control. And I think white people see that. And so they will tend to want to negotiate with who they call a more reasonable person who's not making demands and willing to collaborate.
Right.
Because, I can talk to you because you're more reasonable.
Yeah.
Because you've grown up being more reasonable and more collaborative because you didn't have any choice.
Right.
Now, in urban settings, there's the feeling, the sentiment, and actually the history that black people could maintain and have power within their communities and resources within their communities without that collaboration. There was I would call it a sort of an autocratic kind of a culture where there were community bosses, so to speak, people who were those who dealt with the powers that be and then brought back those resources into the community. The same thing with the Indiana Avenue area. There was some collaboration going on towards common shared goals, which was making money. It tickles me when people talk about the avenue because most of that property was not owned by black people. It was owned by white people, particularly Jewish people, who rented and leased these places to these various entrepreneurs and others who came into this community and started businesses. And then, it became this mecca for black folks in terms of the culture. But those businesses, of course, provided jobs. They were service jobs, but jobs they were. And then the people who were more entrepreneurial, were able to do other things. But it was education that created this higher level of black people, black professionals, who then could deal with the majority leadership on their level. And then they had to be more collaborative as well. So you had these people back in the day like the W.T. Rays and the Frank Lloyds and all these people who were very educated, professional people who knew how to make money, but who also knew how to navigate the hierarchy of leadership. You're not going to be able to get very much accomplished by depending only on someone giving you a job.
Right.
You have to be in a mindset of creating jobs. And so some would think, that's a Republican perspective.
Right, right.
But you have to blow that off and keep it moving. I look back at old political days. Say when Julia Carson left her state Senate role and went back to a local government role. And I didn't understand, why would she do that? That would seem like it was going downhill, down the ladder. But, as I became more mature politically myself, I saw it was an excellent move, because now she's over the Center Township Trustee office. She has control over thousands and thousands of dollars in poor relief, as well as many, many jobs where she could make the decisions about who was going to get those jobs, who was going to get that poor relief, who were going to get those contracts related to the trustee that she had control over. And she did just that. So the complexion, if you will, of the staff at the trustee's office changed significantly when she was over it. Now, before her was Dr. Benjamin Osborne. And he was from, I believe, South America somewhere. And he had begun that transition in terms of who was getting the benefits of these tax dollars that were coming into the trustee's office. But again, that was a power base, manpower base and a resource power base. So, we do have to think in those terms, not in terms of the other end of getting the relief and having your hand out for that support through these social programs versus economic relief through the creation of businesses, and also through being able to retain our dollars within our communities so that we can have that power that we need to be competitive and to survive.
I read a book a few years ago, and it probably shed light for me, Eunice, Eugene Robinson's book, Disintegration, where he talked about Black America and that there was no one Black America anymore. And he broke it down.
There never has been.
Yeah, that's right.
There never has
been.
There
never has been.
America.
But we operate that way. And he talked about basically there are 4 groups within Black America that don't get along, except maybe around the issue of race. That probably race is the only issue that may bring us together. He talked about the Tiger Woods, the Oprah Winfreys, many of the athletes who are millionaires, Michael Jordan, billionaires. Then he talked about, Black middle class. So underneath, the Oprah crowd, you had Black middle class. And then you had this schism between Black middle class and the Black poor. And it was a great schism between those two groups. And then you had the 4th group, Blacks who have come in from other parts of the country, those Blacks who have parents that are both white and Black. And he said that's how it's kind of broken down. And we have different interests, in the country. And I see that in Indianapolis, as I've been here, how it played out. There is no one community, and I'm coming to grips with that. I represent a certain segment of the community, but there are other segments of the community that see things much differently than I do. So the question for me becomes, how do we get at the same table and at least begin to have conversations so that we can find some common ground on some of these issues? And even though we may be going down a different road, how do we accomplish what the goal is?
Well, I think we've got to know our history so that we know the whys. Why are we like this? Why? And we have to be able to provide answers to that question. We've always had these schisms, and some of these were manufactured through our DNA. Always there have been people of mixed race. Always has there been a divide there because of economic and social injustices that would make those who were, say, more predominantly Caucasian, mulatto, octoroon, whatever you want to call that group of Black people. Because remember, back then, all you needed was one drop of Black blood and you were Black. I don't care what you look like. So, but still, that population of people felt it had the ability to assimilate better than darker black people, so to speak. And then you add on top of that the whole thing of class, and that goes along with education. Although it doesn't have to be synonymous, class and education, because you can be a unclassy educated person or a classy poor person.
Yes, that's true.
Depends on how you grew up and was reared, but so you've had these different schisms always, and you still have them today. So through education, I think we can begin to understand the whys. And then once we understand the whys and the ramification of those schisms, then we can better begin to navigate solutions, because we're sort of all in the same boat together.
Right.
And I think when we are under extremely oppressive times, we tend to collaborate more than when things loosen up a little bit.
Right.
You
That's
know.
True.
So we've got to know who we are, where we came from, and how we got to where we are, and what we went through to get there. I do genealogy, and I look at race, in terms of what these people were identified as back in the day, right here in Indiana.
Right.
And I believe, this is my hypothesis,
Okay.
it's me now. The majority of Black Hoosiers with deep roots in Indiana come from mixed race family backgrounds. Now, it was not all related to the slave master, going to the hut cabin shack to be with the black woman.
Right.
Some of these were consenting relationships. And I found time after time after time marriages between blacks and whites, even though it was illegal at one time and remained illegal, I think, until the 1960s in Indiana. You could not, black and whites could not legally marry. There are cases where there were court cases over there. Well, now, so these unions created these children with identity issues, and then they tended to kind of be together. So you know all the background about some of the sororities and fraternities being for light skins and dark skins and all that, And, these are the people who are the educated people now, because, if you're going to be a sorority or fraternity, 9 times out of 10, you have a higher education.
That's right.
And so these people then come out into the workforce, to the communities with these opposing alliances. And so that's a schism for us. And we still have it today.
Yeah, that's true.
We still have that today. You can see it still today. And I think white people capitalize on that. Yeah. Because they see those that look closest to them as less threat.
Right.
And racism is not about, race. It's about power.
Right, that's right.
And the reason that I believe racism is because it is believed by the controlling race that what was done to us as black people could be done to them, given the flip of power. If more control is given to black people, then it is likely that they will do to us what we did to them. So therefore, you have to keep the numbers down in voting. You have to keep the presence down in jobs. You have to do all of these things to keep control. Otherwise, you'll do to me what I did to you. And they just don't know us. And that is an education opportunity too, because black people are not like that. We don't have the heart to do to other people what was done to us. We just don't. We would joke in our families all the time, we know that was somebody white. There wasn't anybody black, because we know that we won't do certain things to other people. Not saying that this never happens, that heinous acts are not committed by black people. Because they are. Right. But you have to then look at the history of slavery and racism, even with the murder rates. Because our lives are devalued so by the minority, us, our people have less value on one another.
That's true.
So, we don't have a problem with killing another black person, because after all, he ain't nothing. That's what society has told us, that a black life has no value or little value, and that money is more important, which I contend is the biggest reason for most of the murders, is about money again. and control and power.
Yep, it is drugs. Eunice, we can talk all day. I tell you, we can talk, and I'm going to have to bring you back so we can talk again. Thank you so much, Eunice, for joining me today on Real Talk with Reverend Harrison. And we'll be back soon.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and this has been Real Talk. Join me next time as I bring more real talk about real issues that affect our community here in Indianapolis and across the country. This is Reverend Harrison. Have a blessed day.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.